Start with the hair. So I think so with inking, like a true inker, it would be all about making your presence known through the techniques you use. Like you can spot like a Terry Austin inked piece, you know, or even a Scott Williams back in the day who do like these squiggle lines, right? When you do more like finishes, it's about kind of combining some of your drawing in with some of the inking, right? So it's not just the ink techniques that kind of pop out, but the actual kind of drawing itself, right? So even with just like kind of squaring off some of these angles here, instead of just going smoothly around, I'm introducing slight changes. I'm a big fan of like Kevin Nolan's inks. I actually had him ink some covers because the way we work, and the thing with Kevin is that he typically almost always kind of redraw stuff. He's like not notorious, but he's known for kind of going in and redrawing elements, but they look better than the people that you know kind of supplied the pencil. So I was like fully expecting. I wanted to get a piece of original Kevin Nolan. I thought he would just kind of go over and redraw everything I kind of gave him, but I would have this amazing Kevin Nolan art. And instead, he was like kept. He was very faithful to the pencils. I don't know what happened. Like he didn't get the memo or something. Like Kevin, I want to get your art, not don't ink me. But yeah, he did an amazing job, though. I was really super impressed, and it was awesome to see his technique over my pencils because he just improved everything, and he did change things here and there and made it infinitely better. He's one of the greats. You know, look, if I would say the artwork that was created in the 50s and 60s, it had a softness to it because they used brushes to ink for the most part, and they had sort of round, soft form. All right. So, okay, let me see what I got here. So I'm going to go in and add elements of Psylocke that kind of I do, but I'm using his structure and placement. So hopefully I still retain a bit of what he put down. All right. So I'm just going to bring it down a tad. And I'm just going to, the same way he nicely cast a shadow off the nose and the bridge, I'm just going to do it off the upper lip. And then I'm going to do the same thing off the lower lip, right? And I'm using a 0.5 because I think there's not a lot of fine rendering, so I don't really need to kind of go. There's not a lot of rendering, so it's more about line weights and shadows, like blocky shadows. And I'm going to go in with brush there and fill that in. Now you have black on black here, and this is behind her neck, and so I want to create a little more depth. So I'm going to go ahead and put some structure lines in there. I don't know if I'm going to ink it that way, but I do know that I have to separate a little bit of what's going on here. I'm going to dip in towards the wrist a little bit more than you've got, and then come out and just hit some of these angles here with the There's the shoulder. So the line weight here is going to be important to me, so I'm going to make that thicker off the sides and the bottom. I think, is this the band? I said this is the forearm. Okay. I'll move it over here because this has to connect up with this. So I think you have it a little over. I'm going to move that whole thing over a bit because this also has to come back up and loop up here, right? If it's over here, you'd see more of it over there, right? And this band, because it's foreshortened, I'm going to drop it down a lot. Okay. I realize the light source is over here, but I'm putting the highlight up here. So this hand is pretty good. So I'm just gonna like add a couple different angles, kind of sharpen the graphic shapes there. Maybe add a little length. Because this finger is a little longer as well. Okay. Remember the palm has to connect all the way, so these fingers are all going to kind of start around the same area here. So for those of you who are interested in having this, doing this as well, if you go to the Discord channel and you're figure out a way, I'll probably do it in the stream on Sunday where I'll just roll for, it'll be a sub-only roll. You got to type in a word or something like that and go from there. I'm looking at the chest. So independent of the mammary glands, as we like to call them in the industry. So here's the rib cage. Here's the back line. So this has got to go like this. I think that line, I'm going to pull it in just a little bit because it has to come in. Come down here. Okay. And then with this belt, I'm not quite sure why it's riding up that way. Probably, let me just go here for a second. And this line's good. I think it expresses the form well. I don't know if the leg, I feel like this is still part of the rear. So if you were to draw the rest of this leg, and I encourage people, like when they're trying to figure this out, like, right? Right? Like, this would actually come down here at least, right? And so the bottom of the pelvis is here. So the earliest the strap could start would be right there. Do this. All right, and we'll. So on this one, I actually drew the line slightly like that. It's hard to tell, but it's a slight shift, and it's important because I think this leg is expressed through these kinds of lines. All right, the same way this leg is expressed through these kinds of lines. And then I would probably go ahead and I'm going to put, I don't even remember her having a buckle, to be honest, so I'm going to put the buckle over here. Same concept, just moving its placement just a little bit. So if I had to draw the structure, lats, rib cage, this line has to meet up with this line. So ignore the secondary sexual characteristics of the form and know that this has to go up and meet here. So really this angle has to be more like that. I can come down here. I'm going to use a dry brush effect to get the edges of the stream of the highlights here. So I'm not going to put a line. But all right, so we're going to put one breast right here. I'm going to come up a little shorter because this has to insert itself, the edge of it, into that armpit there. So this one, because this line has to meet up here, and I think it has to be like this. I know it kind of shrinks it down, but you can always liquefy in Photoshop to your heart's content. But I think structurally, and then I have to match this cup with this, so this looks larger. So I just have to note that when I ink it. So now think about this hair is coming down. It widens out, but you're drawing it in the same plane. Like all this hair looks like it's in the same plane. It would be more interesting, I think, if if you're looking from the top view, right? If this is the part of her hair, right? There's her eyes and her nose, ear. If this hair comes around, think of like Japanese anime hair. Right? Think about it as three pieces, possibly, that this one being at the highest, this one being underneath it, that one being at the lowest. Right? Don't think about it being flat like this. Okay? Think about it as a section of hair that twists like a tie, a necktie. Right? If this were a necktie. Okay? Now you start seeing 3D structure. Right? By doing this and doing this and doing that, forming triangular shapes. When I think of this hair, I don't know if it would splay out even that wide. So I'm going to take the part where this chunk here and say, all right, this part will go up and over. And when I ink with the brush, you're going to see that kind of reflected. And let's go like this. Let's start carving some of those triangular shapes I was talking about. What happens if we do that? I do like how you have a lot more hair. That looks almost too not enough. So let's go ahead and put out what you have here. Okay. Again, looking for those triangular shapes. And so we make it more Western. We put individual strands or smaller strands so it's not all these big angular chunks. And then we have this energy crackle, and I think I'll do the energy crackle with just the side of the brush and use like the template that you have here with pencil. I'm going to first drop in this shadow here, and you'll see what it does is it really kind of makes that forearm. Let's go ahead and put a shadow right here. Let's go ahead and invest ourselves into that core shadow. Okay. I'm not sure. I'll keep this kind of loose back here. So I'm envisioning that the energy crackle or whatever is gonna go over that, and so it's almost like a core sort of shadow effect that we got going on. And I do that because I want to push it back, so I need to have some separation here between the front and back. I'm going to do a rim light as well down here. And then, or maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. Let's start with the rim light. I know I can always kind of fill it in. Okay. I got to figure out what to do up here. I want to do something I haven't quite figured out, but the rib cage is there. I'm just trying to dry out this brush here before I get to the highlight, so don't mind me. Almost at the dry brush I need it to be. Almost. Okay, here we go. And let's go ahead and continue it down here. And then go ahead and play it off here, off the thigh. When it gets drier, the slower you go, the more ink comes down. If I moved it quickly, nothing comes out. That's how dry it is there. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do a dry brush effect here. And I'm going to move this triangular element because I moved this one breast over this way. This whole thing's going to move over as well, structurally. Okay. To separate, if I go all black here, it's just going to disappear into this shadow and these shadows, so I'm going to do some modeling like I did here, but very basic. So the pads of the hand are actually like little chiclets or square bases that are rounded on the sides. So the shadows are going to form around the edges. There's a sort of again, a sort of igloo shape here, so the shadows are on the edges of that kind of the palm, the ball palm of your hand. There's a valley here, so you get a shadow, and then it pops out again. And it's all dry brush to kind of give it, hopefully, a little bit of that kind of leather or kind of look. Okay, that'll allow me to take all this to black as well. I don't have to worry about any sort of rim light effect. So subscribed as well. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, and then we'll finish this here. On her hair. And so I feel like something we want to add, right? So light source, side of the head, shadows are going to be here. Same here, but I'm going to add some white so that it doesn't look like her neck's super thick. So we'll have strands kind of pop out. We're not going to do rim lighting, so I can go all the way to black at the edge. And as that hair kind of swoops down, it goes to black, right? It's a shadow. Light source here, so deep shadows underneath. We'll do the biggest, boldest shadows first. And then add a core shadow at the top of the head. Right? Like this light's bouncing off here. And then as we get to the other side, it gets lighter. And I'm going to use a thinner pen, or actually the 5 again, to kind of tease out the hair. Okay. See, you really work the paper. You can see groove marks. If I lightly ink it, you see little white lines, and it's because there's grooves in the paper where he drew something and erased it, where the ink goes over the top, it doesn't go into the groove, and so you're getting like that kind of effect here. All right. So I think we have most of the shadows down. I'll use the tissue effect. If you dab it in, you get kind of a energy effect. So this in and of itself stylistically can work, right? It's there are artists that kind of work at this scale, like lines with fairly large shadows without too much line work, but I'm kind of known for putting lines, so there are a couple things I want to do. First, we're going to do a gradient across this part to make all this, the ribs kind of show up in shadow, right? the highlight, then the focus becomes mostly on this area here. Okay. We'll clean this up a little bit, kind of fade it out. Okay. Clean that up a little bit. Continue these lines to their logical place where they should be. Gonna make this thumb, it's in the foreground. It's foreshortened, so I'm going to really kind of beef up the lines around the hand. Okay. And then really make the forearm part here very wide on the outside as well. Okay. Feather the hair a little bit more. Create a grad between the heavy black area and the white area. So it doesn't look quite as brushy. Okay. Same thing goes down here. Just by adding a couple more lines, it makes it look like the black shadows are accumulation, a sum of a bunch of lines as opposed to one line. Okay. Make this a little darker because it's the back again. So I'm going to go ahead and shrink it down a little bit. And I realize that there's going to be a lot of white out. I want it to flatten out. Meaning the gravity would kind of make it all cake at the bottom, like flatten out, and I want to make it a little bit lighter than that. The problem with the tissue is that it kind of gives you the same width kind of pattern, and I just kind of want to narrow it a bit here and there. Okay. Like right in there. Maybe make. And then, of course, the inside of this is going to have here's the trick with mouths, right? Anything like if you draw a gun barrel, the light comes in. It's a shorthand. You draw like a triangular shape. It's almost like a Pac-Man in reverse at black. Right? It indicates, right, if you have a square nut, an object like that, if there's light coming in this way, this part is in shadow and this part is in shadow. That creates three-dimensionality. Alright, so if you think of a mouth as essentially a hexagon, the shadow's like that. Beep beep. Okay, so question is, does she have teeth? Let's go no teeth. Oh, maybe she needed teeth. I don't know. Probably needed teeth. I'll have to add it in. Here. But I'm going to put it represented here in the hair. Put your signature right here. Vic G, something like that. It's not aligned with her arm because I always drew it on top, right? It's a blade that was sitting on a psychic blade that sat on top of the arm, so it's not coming out of her fingertips. Thank you, Victor, for sending in the pencil work and allowing me to kind of do my thing over your pencils. I appreciate. I'm sure it's anxiety provoking, so thank you for enduring that.
Watch him turn around. He knows it's through him. Watch this. Oh my! You just see that? A magician. That's incredible.